Hello, everyone, and welcome to the third Sustainable Insurance Summit. I'm Anthony Ireland. I'm founder of Better Insurance Network. Thank you all so much for attending. We've got a really action-packed couple of afternoons for you, designed to progress the conversation on sustainable insurance. And action really is the key word now. We've talked about this for a couple of years. It's time now that we move from ideas and targets to real tangible impact. And hopefully over the next couple of afternoons, we can provide you with lots of takeaways and action points that you can start working on today. So a bit about Better Insurance Network, for those who don't know, we're a community of insurance professionals focused on driving sustainability in insurance. We believe insurance has a critical role to play in delivering a more sustainable world. And our mission and our role really is to raise literacy across the market to accelerate implementation of sustainable insurance. As well as events like this, we're today launching our Sustainable Insurance Roadmap and Report, a publication which is based on 18 months worth of interviews, research, events, etc., and the creation of our e-learning program, Sustainability for Insurers, which is the first online learning program of its kind dedicated to sustainability in insurance. You can check out both of those at our exhibitor booth, along with, of course, our wonderful sponsors. Thank you so much to AXA, Moody's Analytics, Waitmans, and Oliver Wyman for supporting this event. Really looking forward to hearing the insights from your speakers over the next couple of days. And please do visit their exhibitor booths as well and check out their links, because there's lots of useful insights and thought leadership content on those exhibitor booths as well. So as I said, we've got two very full afternoons to get through. On day one, the sessions are really all about actions we can take today. So we're starting with a panel on claims, looking at reducing emissions and embedding sustainability into the claims process. And that's a really important topic because it's been overlooked to a degree in sustainable insurance conversations, but it's a really key touch point with the real economy, and you can start making an impact today. Then we're going to be looking at measuring Scope 3 emissions. So a really complex task, and progress is being made. So hopefully with our speakers that we've assembled today, we can continue to make progress on that topic. And we're also going to be looking at the emerging sustainability disclosure landscape, which is something I know a lot of you will be probably scratching your heads and tearing your hair out, depending on where you are with it. So that's going to be really useful information as well. Day two is all about risk and opportunity. Sustainability presents game-changing risks and opportunities for insurers. We're kicking off with a keynote from Martin Powell of AXA, who's going to be talking about innovation in insurance. We're then going to be looking at three really fascinating and important topics. Firstly, the opportunity in the carbon markets, $1 billion plus opportunity for insurers. Secondly, drawing the links between climate risks, climate litigation, and insurance, and what does that all mean? And then finally, the critical role that insurance can play in scaling and accelerating the energy transition, and how we can overcome some of the challenges that are currently holding us back. So hopefully you agree we're covering a lot of topics that are really front of mind at the moment, and can really push the agenda forward. Just a bit of housekeeping. You can view the live session in the live sessions tab quite intuitively. There is also an agenda, obviously, that you can go through and find on-demand content and the live content, and perhaps view things at a different time if you've missed something. You can also view all of the other attendees, the speakers, and of course the exhibitors on the platform, going through the tabs at the top of the Swapcard browser. We also have on-demand sessions on the platform from our recent events on nature and resilience. So all in all, we've got about 14 hours of content available and to get through. So let's not waste any more time. I'm delighted that we have a brilliant keynote speaker with us today, Sean Tarbuck, CEO of ICMIF, the International Cooperative and Mutual Insurance Federation. Sean doesn't just lead the mutual industry. He's been working behind the scenes for many, many years across the insurance market and beyond our sector, really driving the sustainability agenda and working on various initiatives designed to build a safer and more resilient world. And that's what he's here to talk about today, to reiterate that message, the role that insurance can play, and also fill us in on some pretty exciting, interesting, and impactful initiatives that are currently underway, some of which you may have heard of, some of which you may not. So it promises to be a really interesting 20 minutes or so. I won't take up any more time. Really looking forward to it and hope everyone else is. And I will hand over to you, Sean.
Thanks, Anthony. Absolute pleasure to be addressing this wonderful audience. Today, I'm going to share what role insurers can play in climate change, and what is it we're doing, and how is it we're turning what in most cases is going to be ambition into actual action. So I've titled it here as Insurers Stroke Mutual. I want all insurers to be doing this, not just the mutual sector. So this isn't a mutual plug or a play. I think we've all got abilities within our insurance organizations to actually get involved in solving probably what is our biggest existential crisis. So, well, what is the problem and how can we assist? I think most of you know what the current situation is in the climate change battle. There's a great report put out by Insure Our Future called 50 Years of Climate Failure. And in there, you've got some good quotes from there. One from the Institute of Faculties of Actuaries. Usually the actuaries know what they're talking about. So even in a 1.5 degree global warming, it's extremely risky, with a chance of triggering multiple climate tipping points. 1.5 should be viewed similar to a ruined scenario by society, a level which must not be exceeded. And then moving on to those that you know, Sean Kidney from the Climate Bonds Initiative and the IPCC report are already saying we're on the 1.8 trajectory. So not good news. A rise in 3 degrees to take it to another level by 2100, according to The Economist, is catastrophic. We know what it is. And just in reality check, just last year, more than 3.8 billion, so nearly half the world's population, experienced extreme heat between June and August last month. Probably not hit many of your radars because a lot of it's happening in the developing nations, which is not insured in most cases. So the problems are serious, and it is, to me, an existential threat for the rest of the market for what we're doing. So in terms of how we're seeing it currently, we all know we're seeing increasing disasters. You see it in almost every country, and that they're on the extremes. So it's the weather, it's the droughts, it's the rainfall, it's the all of the disasters that are actually hitting all of the countries around the world. That's increasing our claims. That in itself means, because we're all regulated, we have to increase our premiums. The more we increase our premiums, the more areas become uninsurable. And we're already seeing that in the likes of Florida, which has been for a number of years. California more recently, some parts of Canada are starting to get that way. So this isn't a developing nation issue. This is a worldwide issue. So the more uninsurable areas, the more our protection gap absolutely increases because people can't afford it. And there are some solutions being put in place, we know, but that vicious circle we're seeing, basically, in my view, by 2050 or somewhere between 2050 and 2100, insurers and reinsurers will become obsolete. So why are we not doing more about it? Why are we not taking this as being an essential change? Well, the answer is some of us are. but a lot of you in the room today are the ones that we're talking to where we know this is happening. What we need to get in is all need to pull in other people from outside of our coalition of the willing and bring them in so that they can see what's actually going to happen in our industry. And when I've painted this picture to non-insurance groups, which I regularly speak at as well, I have to point out the fact that for every industry, insurance is actually essential. All businesses need it. Most industries are regulated, and they all require to have insurance. Okay, maybe not in the developing world, but certainly in the developed world. And a developed country really relies on insurance, and it is actually a societal necessity. And I think it's a societal good as well, but maybe more on that later. So is there a solution? Is it a mutual solution, or is it just an insurance solution? I was at COP28, and I'm sure many of you in the audience were as well. And what are your views on COP28? Well, that's kind of irrelevant. To me, it didn't go far enough, but the bilaterals that we had there were exceptionally good. There's a lot of good people working towards trying to solve our biggest problem. But even one of the quotes from the UNFCCC's statement itself said, people-centered climate action is essential to ensure the social cohesion and increased societal buy-in required for an accelerated and sustainable transition to a net zero economy. So they're recognizing that what we offer as insurers and mutual insurers is people-centered climate action. We can do this, and we can do this together. And pardon me for just one little step back into what ICMIF stands for, but I think it's important because many of our members stand for this as well. They'll have this in their purpose statement. But we changed our purpose statement 2 years ago, and that now states we're trying to create a safer and more resilient world. And how do we do that? We do it through inclusive resilience, through protection, prevention, and influence. So we've kind of changed our whole industry perspective. And ICMIF themselves represents around about 8% of the world's insurance market. But mutuals represent around about 27% of the insurance market. So it's not a small group. And this is a group that, through ICMIF, are really trying to make those changes. So in my view, all insurers must have a resilient strategy. Well, how do we go about that? Well, I've been involved in this for at least 10 years, probably 25 years since I first started doing some sustainability and having that as part of my focus as CEO of ICMIF. But we've been given 3 global agreements, of which all countries have to sign up to. Not all industries have to sign up to it, and maybe that's the problem. But we've got the Sendai Agreement for risk. We've got the Paris Climate Agreement, which, just say for the sake of it here, we'll talk about the investment side. And we've got the Sustainable Development Goals, which we can talk about the risk and the underwriting side, and the more holistic delivery of how we should frame what we do as society and therefore as businesses. All of these together, if you look at all of them individually, should help you reduce your net zero commitments. And that, to be honest, is all we're asking for at this stage. All businesses must have a net zero commitment. And it's coming to that anyway, regulatory-wise. We're starting to see transitions into net zeros becoming a requirement of a number of countries around the world. So it's only going to accelerate from here on in. And here we are in 2024. By 2050, and that's the measurement we've got to try and measure. How do we get to 2050 in a structured, just, and transitional way? Now, in my view, to have a net zero commitment, that's all about resilient businesses. So resilient businesses generally are responsible businesses as well. That doesn't necessarily follow, but at the moment, that's definitely what we're seeing. So when it comes to resilient businesses, I would add on resilient communities as well. So to me, or to the world actually, resilience is looking at the lens through disaster risk reduction, which is what the UNDRR has, which that's the Sendai Agreement. So to us, insurance is absolutely crucial to that, and I agree with. And you can put this into different sections: prevention, adaptation, and mitigation. Now, most of the money that's being spent towards infrastructure, let's bring in the infrastructure argument here, is around mitigation. So what are you doing to try and make people safer? Just sandbanks here and sort of general changes in the environment. Adaptation is major changes in the environment. So how do we get to that adaptation? And at the moment of infrastructure spend around the world, only about 1% is going towards adaptation. And that balance needs to be redressed significantly. So prevention is part of, or in two buckets, is adaptation and mitigation. So what we're trying to achieve here is protecting lives and livelihoods. That's what everyone talks about, but that's a nice buzzword. It's a nice saying. I think I started it probably back in 2012 when we had our manifesto, protecting lives and livelihoods. But what it's really doing is reducing claims and keeping insurance relevant. So back to that original chart we had, if we can keep the claims lower, then we can keep the premiums at an affordable rate, we can keep more people insured, and so the cycle continues. So a net zero commitment, as I said earlier, this is really about insurance, in our case, recognizing that we need to make a commitment as to how do we get to net zero by whatever date that is. And there's all sorts of dates thrown around, but 2050 is the ultimate date. And you'll see it nicely divided up. I mean, operational, a lot of organizations are saying 2025, 2030, because insurers tend to just have buildings, fleet cars, big computers. So it's quite straightforward to get your operational one, and it's financially beneficial. So why wouldn't you do it? The underwriting one is a lot more tricky, and we've got solutions for that we'll talk about in a minute. But the investment one is probably the one we're getting the most. And both of the investments, I've seen investments, that's assets under management of our organizations, insurers, stating 2040 could be a target. A lot of them are going for 2050. Underwriting, I think a lot of people are finding that very difficult. So you're seeing 2050 for net zero for those. Whichever it's going to be, what you really need is your stakeholder and your governance committee set in place so that you can actually achieve these targets through your own transition plans. That's the key bit. So if you haven't got the governance bit starting now, because you can do that quite comfortably from your board all the way down to senior management to all of the departments, you should have sustainability or transition to net zero at each of those stages. That's what good stakeholder governance would look like. That's how you get there. So it's putting into your reports, your annual reports, whether you've got a transition report, a sustainability report, whatever you want to call it, you've got to put that out there and say, this is how I'm going to get there. And it's got to be measured and it's got to be quantifiable. So breaking down resilience into those four areas, and let's face it, these are all interconnected. We've started with prevention. We're going to talk a little bit more about underwriting, the investment side, and then obviously what we do must be reported. Just want to talk a little bit about the risk side, which is the work that we've done to date with the United Nations Disaster Risk Reduction Team. Our relationship started with them probably in 2015, but it started to get very serious in 2019. And what we're trying to do with our collaboration is to clarify the practical aspects of shifting from a focus on providing risk reduction products and services to an emphasis on prevention through DRR incentives, awareness, capacity, and financing. How are we doing? Well, I think we're doing pretty well, actually. Certainly, when we speak to the market, we speak to anyone involved in this, they're all saying, wow, this is great. But it did start from a report which we put out in 2021, looking at the practical solutions that are out there already. And from that report, from about 50 case studies, we were able to develop a mechanism or a framework, if you want to call it that, From the framework, we then start to do case studies and put them into a resilience hub, which is available to everybody. And then from there, we've developed the metrics by which we can launch a benchmark, which we did in October 2022. So we've built what we've built, and now it's really up to the market and to the members to try and help with that. I'm not going to go into the 7 mechanisms. I'm just going to leave them there, but obviously they'll be available to you. But we split them down essentially into 2 areas where insurers can have an impact. One is the direct mechanism, so that's around your pricing, variable pricing, creating incentives for reducing risk amongst your customers. We've got the prerequisites, which very often run into the others, and exemptions, which many of us already have. So those 2 are usually quite straightforward. But then the investment side comes in. How do we ensure our investment actually reduces preventions risk and build resilience? And that's where I'll talk a little bit more later about the key investments which we're going to have in using our assets to reduce our claims effectively. Mostly it's going to be through infrastructure investments. So there's some great examples of how that's happening out there in the market, but absolutely nowhere near enough. And it's recognizing that one side of the balance sheet, the investments, can be used to help the other side on the liability side. And if we're not doing it, why are we not doing it? Because it makes logical sense. And then we've got the indirect mechanisms around creating awareness. Many people do some great things around the education side. And we've got the build and share capacity and technology for risk modeling. We've got some brilliant risk modelers out there. We need to make that readily available. Some good examples in Holland and in Canada, where we've seen risk models being developed and then given to the general public to use. And then we've got promotion and enhancement of societal capital. And this is probably a much more mutual concept, where we would do it for the community because that's the right thing to do, not necessarily just our customers or policyholders. And then lastly, how do we collaborate with the public sector to signal on sustainable development and support decisions? So how are we working in public-private partnerships? So they're the 7 mechanisms that we've got. As I say, just to finalise up on the resilience benchmark, it has been fully tested. 15 of our members helped build it in 2022, and that's putting the measurements and the metrics across it. We then encourage engagement in there. We share best practices, so we're encouraging peer-to-peer learning between our members so they do things better. We started actually measuring members Q3 last year, so 6 months ago. And we've got 15 members already measured. And the rollout to the rest of industry we're doing through the Insurance Development Forum, and some of those larger members, the multinationals, are also wanting to do that, and that's already started in this quarter. So just to put it into a quick diagram, we've got a resilience benchmark tool, which is the first to market in the world. No one else has this for insurance. We want to make sure as many insurers as possible can use it. It's a free to market. Our members are using it. The multinationals that are members of the IDF are using it. We're getting the metrics and measurements embedded in other reporting mechanisms, such as the GRI reporting and our Sustainable Development Goals benchmark. A little bit more on that now. So again, we've developed the underwriting side. So this is primarily towards underwriting, although it's all to do with all risk within the business, as well as some of the softer sides of the ES and G. So we've developed with Swiss Re, with approval from the United Nations Environment Programme, the PSI, a model whereby we can measure our impact against the Sustainable Development Goals. We call it the ICMIF Calibrated SDG Calculator. The new version of this, which is being used this year, has 66 metrics. Again, first to market, no one else has done this. It is very tricky to do. We've got 20 members that have already signed up to it. Did last year's one, which was 49 metrics. This year's, we've added a few more in through the working group that we've got that's trying to make this better. It is UN approved, and it's also hopefully going to be in some of the GRI and ISSB reporting requirements, because no one else has this sort of extensive view of how to measure yourself against the SDG calculator. And it's not easy. We've had a lot of brains working on this over the last 3 years, but we're very comfortable where it's at now. It is a tool that measures impact and reports on the progress towards the insurance development goals. Those of you that are in Europe that are having to do things like the CSRD reporting, you will find that the SDG calculator, if you do that, it gives you all the answers for the CSRD. So it's quite a few years ahead of where the regulatory reporting requirement actually is. So it's a very good tool to use, and hopefully will help members not only measure their impact, but also save them a lot of money. And again, just a quick overview as to how it came about. So 3 members, along with Swiss Re, developed the alpha version, the beta version. We then rolled out with 27 organizations from around about 20 different countries. So it is a globally tested. We put the calibration in, the metrics in for all members to measure. The first one, 25 organizations have actually run it, some very large ones, as well as some of the smaller ones, and some in developing markets as well. So it's gone around the world. And then version 2 is the one with the 66 metrics, which is being rolled out this year. So we're hoping that'll be the steady state of where we should be. But we're very excited about this. And again, the aim is not just to keep it for ICMIF members, but the aim is to roll it out to the rest of the market. On the investment side, there's a lot of great work going on here through the UNEP PRI, the Net Zero Asset Owner Alliance, and the Asset Manager Alliance. So we're not trying to do what they're doing. That doesn't make sense. But what we do here is, over the last 5 years, we've measured the amount of assets under management that the ICMIF members are investing in sustainable frameworks. And that's gone from 4 years ago from being 250 billion to over 1 trillion last year. So it's increased fourfold. A lot of those are investments, as we say, in green bonds. I happen to sit on the green bond board as well, the CBI, as well as the taxonomy towards resilient infrastructure. And I think where we're putting a lot of our energy is in the new area, the new category of infrastructure investments. And the UNDRR last year set up the Investment Advisory Board for promoting and giving a framework around the investment in infrastructure. And here's just a quick summary. This is a group primarily of investors. There's 12 of us on the board. 3 of them are from insurers. The other 9 are from the investment market side, doing the debt and the equity. So we're trying to find solutions that aren't out there at the moment that will encourage investors to invest in infrastructure, but also have an overlay, as going back to the original chart I showed you, where we need to reduce claims. So how do we make that investments so that we are actually keeping people safer, which ultimately reduces the claims in the market as well as the claims for our insurers. So I think that's where our focus is, on this new areas of infrastructure investments. It's already been stated again by Sean Kidney from the Green Bonds CBI that he wants this to have a market of 1.5 trillion by the end of 2025. That's only 2 years. That's hugely ambitious. Given that there are green bond investments total has just gone over 4 trillion. But again, we've managed to do that over a space of about 10, 11 years. So this is a new investment area, but an investment area which insurers should be investing in because it makes sense to our business model. And then when it comes down to the reporting, really, obviously, what we report is so essential. And I certainly heard it from some of our mutual insurers that say, well, everything we do is sort of sustainable. Yes, it is, but we need to have those metrics that show we're getting better and better and better at it. And I do believe the GRI is important, the Global Reporting Index. I'm on the insurance task force. There's a banking one and then a financial services one. There's one for a number of other industries, and they're really stepping up here. So the reporting isn't just for investors, but the reporting is for the wider general public as to what we're doing in certain areas. We know there's an awful lot of reporting asks out there, but we also know that there will be harmonization. We expect harmonization, and it'll all build towards the International Sustainability Standards Board, the ISSB, which has put its number 1 and number 2 out of its IFRSs at the moment. So I think this whole reporting structure, which I know is a nightmare at the moment because we're reporting to so many different bodies in different countries. But I do believe there will be some harmonization, and I think work that the GRI is doing for insurance will really focus in on that, because that will then get picked up by the other bodies quite quickly. I'm not going to go through this because time's against us, but this is just our look at how we're getting from ambition to action. To be perfectly honest, we've been in the action mode probably since we started developing some of the initiatives we've got really back in 2017, 2018. And we're starting to see the proof of the 2 benchmarks and SDGs and resiliency coming through. Some of the work we're doing with the United Nations Development Programme in partnership with ourselves, some of the work that's going through in the Insurers Development Forum, it's all moving in the right direction. But is it moving quickly enough? And that's the question. And in my view, no, it's not. Can we get there? Well, we're hoping that by leading with purpose and impact, we're going to inspire and assist our members, but also the rest of the industry. When everyone I speak to says, wow, this is great, how can we get more involved? How can we find out more about it? So, because there is very little out there, very little in terms of what is moving in the right direction and what is actually getting businesses, insurance businesses, to move to being more resilient and still being relevant by 2050. So to come back to what we set out to do is creating a safer and more resilient world. We're trying to do it the mutual way, but I do believe we should all be doing this. Otherwise, as a business, insurance won't be relevant by 2050. And I think that's a serious thing to think about. We need insurance, but insurance needs to really step up much quickly. In my view, I do think we're on one of the hockey stick curves. I think we are going to get there. I'm seeing a lot more move towards doing the right thing. And if I conclude, I do think everyone needs to have this transition plan. We need to get on that bandwagon as soon as possible. And then we need to measure and adapt all the way through to whatever the keystones are, the 2030, 40 or 50. We need to get there. So thank you very much for listening, everybody. That's my little view on the world as it is. I am very confident we will get there, but we really need to accelerate now. Thank you very much indeed. And back to you, Anthony.
Well, thank you so much, Sean. That was great. A great way to kick off the event. Some really interesting work going on behind the scenes. I'm particularly excited about the SDG calculator for insurers. I think that's a really important and useful tool. So thank you again to Sean. We are going to flip over to our first panel discussion now, which is all around claims. That's going to be led by Robbie Maycock of AXA XL. So I will hand over to Robbie. Before I do, just a quick reminder, there is a live chat box in the bottom right of your screen. Please put any questions you have for the speakers in there. We do encourage you to put questions in there because it always makes for a more lively panel. We'll also be running polls through the day. Please do engage with those polls. It helps us understand where we are as a market and it helps inform some of the conversation that we're having live as well. So without further ado, I will now hand over to you, Robbie.